quicker than when I start doing one by one. Yes? Like with you, I will introduce you because you will stand over there. Already? You can do the personal. You can stand there or sit there. What do you prefer?
Here?
You prefer there? Yeah. If you want, you can already go here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, coming back from a topic about hate, we are now going to hear from different governments what they are already doing against anti-Semitism in their country. So now we are talking about action, and we heard it not only from one speaker, we heard it from several actions. It's about the deeds that we do and not just the words. So please welcome all the panelists. We will start with a small personal statement of Senator Delattre from France. Thank you.
Thank you. Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs les parlementaires, Mesdames et Messieurs, en vos grades et qualités, chères toutes et tous. Au nom de mes collègues sénateurs, et je me permets d'y ajouter mes collègues députés, tout particulièrement Caroline Janvier, secrétaire au bureau de l'Assemblée nationale, je tenais tout d'abord à remercier Monsieur David Kalfa, président de RBF France, Forum de la mémoire, pour son invitation ici à Auschwitz, sur ces terres à jamais meurtries par la cruauté humaine et qui nous rappelle à chaque instant l'ignominie commise au nom d'une seule idéologie, l'antisémitisme. Même si des décennies se sont écoulées depuis la fin de la Seconde Guerre mondiale, l'antisémitisme, lui, n'a malheureusement pas disparu. Au contraire, il redouble, et ces dernières années, la France a été touchée en son sein par ces actes barbares antisémites. Nous connaissons tous les noms d'Ilan Halimi, de Myriam Montségo, de Gabriel et Darié Sandler et de leur père Jonathan, de l'école aux Arts Torah de Toulouse, de Mireille Knoll, dont nous avons entendu le témoignage poignant de sa petite fille hier soir. Tous tués et massacrés parce que juifs. Car oui, il faut le dire, en France, comme dans de nombreux pays, l'antisémitisme tue toujours. Si ces meurtres ont fait écho, malheureusement, insidieusement et quotidiennement, il engendre de nombreuses autres victimes dans un silence assourdissant. 7 Français de confession juive sur 10 déclarent avoir subi un acte antisémite. Selon un rapport du service de protection de la communauté juive, 589 actes antisémites ont été recensés en 2021, soit une augmentation de près de 75% par rapport à l'année précédente. À cela s'ajoutent également les dégradations physiques de biens, comme en témoignent les profanations des cimetières juifs. Le ministère de l'Intérieur d'indiquer que 73% des actes racistes portant atteinte aux personnes sont dirigés contre des juifs. Concomitamment, nous assistons aussi à la résurgence d'un antisémitisme de plus en plus décomplexé et banalisé par l'explosion de la haine en ligne. En effet, l'anonymat sur les réseaux sociaux favorise l'expression antisémite. Le gouvernement français met pourtant en œuvre des moyens pour combattre cet antisémitisme persistant et cette haine pluriséculaire. Je voudrais tout d'abord vous rassurer par rapport à nos programmes scolaires. La volonté et les moyens d'action pour enseigner la Shoah sont mis, même si nous savons que dans certains quartiers, cela peut être compliqué d'aborder ces heures sombres de l'histoire. Mais nous avons des enseignants déterminés que nous soutenons. Et je voudrais avoir ici une pensée pour Samuel Paty. Concomitamment à l'enseignement, le gouvernement a mis en place la semaine d'éducation et d'action contre le racisme et l'antisémitisme. Chaque année, cette semaine, qui a lieu en mars, est organisée en partenariat avec la délégation interministérielle de lutte contre le racisme et l'antisémitisme. Elle vise à sensibiliser les élèves de nos écoles, de nos lycées à toute forme de discrimination et aux dangers qui en résultent. L'école de la République se doit de faire, d'enseigner et de rappeler à tous les élèves que chaque être doit être libre de croire ou de ne pas croire et d'exercer dans le respect de l'autre religion qu'il souhaite exercer. Car la France est un État laïque, un État de liberté. Cette laïcité qui m'est d'autant plus chère car issue du parti qu'il a mis en place en 1905, le Parti radical. Plus récemment, une convention pluriannuelle d'objectifs a été signée entre l'État français et la Ligue internationale contre le racisme et l'antisémitisme. Cette convention prévoit 5 axes d'action. L'éducation à la citoyenneté en milieu scolaire, la promotion de l'accès à tous aux droits grâce à une assistance juridique, la formation des acteurs clés de la société, l'accompagnement de la jeunesse par des événements culturels, la lutte contre la prolifération de la haine en ligne. Le Parlement légifère et agit également, et des décisions significatives ont été prises en ce sens. Ainsi, à l'Assemblée nationale, une proposition de résolution visant à lutter contre l'antisémitisme a été adoptée en 2019. Au Sénat, il y a quelques mois, dans la suite de nombreux travaux en la matière, nous avons adopté une résolution sur la lutte contre toutes les formes d'antisémitisme. Mais le vrai garant de la liberté de culte et d'être ce que nous voulons être en France, c'est la laïcité, encore et toujours. Celle que nous défendons et celle qui permet aux hommes et aux femmes libres de développer l'exercice de leur religion après avoir été instruits par la République et dotés d'une capacité de discernement et d'analyse du monde et de l'environnement qui les entoure. Un façonnement du libre arbitre au service de l'épanouissement de celles et ceux qui veulent croire en un Dieu comme de celles et ceux qui ne veulent pas croire. La lutte contre l'antisémitisme, enfin, doit être également menée au niveau européen. De noter la régulation du Digital Act qui a été approuvé par le Parlement et qui fixe nombre de règles pour responsabiliser les plateformes numériques et lutter contre toutes les formes de contenu illicite. Ce règlement va dans le bon sens. Enfin, quoi de plus concret pour ne jamais oublier que d'exercer notre devoir de mémoire. Se confronter à ce qui a été une réalité de l'homme et qui menace de l'être encore si nous n'y prenons garde. L'horreur, la barbarie, la haine. Quoi de plus édifiant que le spectacle de désolation de cette usine de la mort que nous avons visitée hier. Ce camp est la démonstration que l'homme est capable du pire. Nous devons y confronter les jeunes générations qui n'ont pas vécu cette épreuve dans leur chair pour construire la vie qui continue et cultiver l'espoir. Car comme le rappelait le film sur la vie de Simone Veil, et je voudrais saluer les mots que la Première ministre du Parlement européen a eus pour cette femme exceptionnelle et inspirante hier soir. Ce qui nous permet de tenir, c'est l'espoir. L'occasion de saluer le réalisateur Olivier Dahan, qui, à travers le 7e art, concourt à ce devoir de mémoire. L'espoir, c'est aussi tout le sens des mots tracés par Jacques Chaban-Delmas, ancien Premier ministre de la France et maire de Bordeaux, d'où je viens, sur le livre d'or en novembre 1970. En arrivant d'Auschwitz, de la nuit à l'aurore, de la mort à la vie, de la haine à l'amour, et voici l'espérance. Merci.
Thank you very much. Yes, please take a seat. So there is so much we can talk about, but we have only like around half an hour. So what I'm interested in, like, what are the measures in your specific country? Please introduce yourself briefly, and then tell what are you doing in your country. And afterwards, I would like to talk also about the challenges. We have one representative sitting here also from the European Parliament. So from you, I would like to have like the bigger overview because we have to learn from each other. So I will start now with Dr. Brandstetter from Austria, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. What do we do? I brought it with me. It's Nationale Strategie gegen Antisemitismus. So in Austria, there is a national strategy against anti-Semitism. That's the good news. It's only a year ago that we started with that, but we do it. I really have to admit it took Austria a very long time after World War II to admit that many Austrians were part of the killing machine of the Nazis, but that's a matter of fact. I lived as a journalist in Germany for a long time, and I realized the difference, how the Germans accepted responsibility and the Austrians accepted responsibility. Part of the problem was the so-called Moscow Declaration, so they told us in 1943, the four Allied powers, that we were the first victim of Hitler, which of course is not true. Many Austrians were part of this killing machine, as I said, and it took a long time also because of our history of anti-Semitism. Not only in the Middle Ages, very strong anti-Semitism around 1900 with the very famous mayor of Vienna, Karl Lueger, who won his elections with incredible anti-Semitic campaign. But to come back to today, oh yes, we do a lot, and the good news is also that 4 parties in the Austrian parliament, so the 2 parties in government, it's the People's Party and the Green Party. Nina Tomaselli, my friend, is here with us. And 2 opposition parties, the Social Democrats and the NEOS, the Liberal Party, where I'm part of. We are in that question. There are many other questions where we have big differences, but in that question, the 4 parties are on the same road. There's a 5th party in parliament. It's the so-called Freedom Party, but they are not freedom. They are a right-wing radical party, the so-called FPÖ. They are not part of this strategy. That's the bad part in it. So just to mention a few things out of this strategy. First of all, and it was mentioned many times here already, is education. We have to educate the young people. We have to tell them what happened. We have to show it. And what you told Regina today, it was very impressive because we, my generation, we had the chance to talk to many survivors or refugees. You know, Arirat, later editor-in-chief of Jerusalem Post, was a good friend of mine, and many others, and they told my generation what has happened. It's easier to understand it when you have someone who can tell you. So now it's our responsibility to go to schools and tell what we heard from you and others. And as I said, it's education. The second thing is security. So we also decided on a certain sum of €4 million for the Jewish community. We have to give security to this Jewish community. And we have to say it, and that's the next thing I want to say, it's open words. We have to talk about what happened and try to explain the truth. It's punishment. You know, we have very strong laws against repeating slogans from the Nazi time. That's good. But we have this punishment. And one more thing, it's integration. I know also from my work as a journalist that there are many young people coming from Syria, from Afghanistan. They never heard the word Holocaust. For them, the Jews are just those who took their country. So it's very important, and this is also part of this strategy. We say when you want to live in this country, you have to be part of lessons, and you have to sit together with other people, and you have to learn what has happened. And I already will finish, because that's also very good news. Normally, you know, when a parliament or a government decide, let's do this or that, okay, it takes some time. By the way, this strategy has 180 pages. As we say, paper is patient. But not only that, there's already a report about implementation. So within the same year, we have a report what was done and also what will be done. And that also, I think, is a good news. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I would love to go more into that, and we will. But first, we will hear a little bit more about the British approach from MP Wakeford.
Thank you. I think when I was at a similar conference in January at Babin Yar, we were speaking about what happened last year. And obviously during the conflict, we had the Month of Hate, which was the largest number of incidents of anti-Semitism that had ever been recorded. During that month, we had seen convoys of vehicles driving from the north of England to Finchley and Golders Green, a large Jewish community in London, to basically spew out anti-Semitic tropes outside Jewish care homes. When we keep on talking about interfaith work, we're talking to the wrong audiences. You know, when you've got rabbis and imams who are arguably the most tolerant in society, they already know what the issues are. So what we need to do is speak to those young lads who want to get in the cars and drive those convoys. So I think there's a lot of work that already needs to be done. But there was a book written last year by a famous comedian, David Baddiel, called Jews Don't Count. And I think the issue with anti-Semitism in the UK is that it's always been seen as not racist, but classist. You know, Jews have too much money, they're too white, therefore it can't be racist. But it is, it's absolutely racist. So I think we are starting to change that narrative. But what we are seeing, and as has been mentioned previously, there's a rise in anti-Zionism, and we see that with, you know, young people in the Jewish community who perhaps their only experience of Israel is seeing negative press in regards to what's going on in the Middle East. So we certainly need to be doing a lot more there, because anti-Zionism ultimately is anti-Semitism. It's the same, different side of the same coin. What we are seeing at the moment is a greater push in trying to tackle anti-Semitism on university campuses. There was a famous politician who said education, 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 and it's absolutely right. You know, education is ultimately the way to tackle any hatred. The problem is you can preach all the tolerance in schools, in universities, as much as you want, but if you're going back to hatred at home, then you're not tackling the issue. So we do need to be widening that scope. But thankfully, with Lord Mann, who is the independent anti-Semitism advisor to the government, we've set up a task force on dealing with anti-Semitism at universities. We've already gone through, I think, 15 different universities. We've got another 30 to do, but this is mainly to try and tackle some of the issues we've seen in recent years. Professor Miller, for example, at Bristol University, took several letters from MPs, from all-party parliamentary groups, from Jewish societies all over the country, to the point where we were even writing to the university donors. And it took the best part of 3 years for the university to actually do something about that. He kept on trying to hide behind academic freedom of speech, and yeah, I think we're all supportive of freedom of speech, but when freedom of speech is inciting hatred, you need to draw the line. So there's obviously a lot more going on there, but I think in terms of legislation that's been put forward, we've got the Online Harms Bill, which, when we've been speaking about anti-Semitism on the streets, whether it's from the far right, the far left, or as was mentioned earlier from a Islamist section, what we really need to do is start tackling it online. When we saw Wiley spout awful, abhorrent anti-Semitism, it took 72 hours for Twitter, Facebook, etc. to take action. We've seen it again with Kanye West, Ye, whatever he wants to call himself this week. So thankfully his sponsors and social media have acted much more quickly, but I feel we're missing a trick, because whilst we're creating a equivalence between what's legal in the real world and what's legal virtually, what we're missing is what's legal but harmful. So I think we can be doing much more there to stamp out hatred, bullying, and ultimately a lot of anti-Semitic tropes, which I do think are flying underneath the radar for these online portal and their reporting mechanisms. But ultimately, it will all come down to Holocaust education. Whilst we've got all but one MP who signed up to the higher definition of anti-Semitism, that's been done on our personal choices. But what we need to do is make sure there's a greater education in our schools. We've got great charities like the Holocaust Education Trust. I'm very fortunate to represent one of the largest Jewish communities in the country, so I'm fortunate to see survivors on a regular basis. But I shouldn't just be fortunate because of where I represent. So we need to be making sure these books, these stories really are going out into our schools, so that we can really make sure that everyone understands what happened. And whilst I don't ever want to hear the phrase "never again," because those words seem very hollow, especially with what we're seeing in Ukraine, with the Uyghur in Xinjiang. I think we do need to try to find a different platform, but it will come down to education, it will come down to trade. But there's a lot with BDS as well, which we'll hopefully get onto later, but I'll draw it a close for there to allow more time for Q&A.
Yes. We will go back into that. What I understood for you, we have to have education. The problem is like finding the balance between freedom of speech and hating, and also that our words should not be hollow. So maybe there should also be a strategy behind. But we talk about that later. Right now, I want to go. I want to go to the representative of the European Parliament, Mrs. Asimakopoulou. I said it perfectly in the preparation.
You said
it
heard. Perfectly now too.
But before just talking about the European Parliament, you're from Greece, so yes. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the situation in Greece. There was an extremist party in Parliament a while ago. They're gone now, right? They're not gone.
Well,
they're out of Parliament. So yes, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Anna Michelle Asimakopoulou. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know it doesn't sound like it, but I actually represent Greece in the European Parliament. I am the product of a love relationship between a Greek Orthodox man and a Jewish American from New York. And my heritage has been a part of my mandate in politics, where I got involved in local politics originally. And I have to thank the European Jewish Association really for this. This is the first time that I've visited Auschwitz, and I really, it's really been an incredible experience. Walking yesterday by the train tracks under the full moon, listening to the violin, I could feel in my soul the 1,870 Romanov Jews that were taken on a snowy night on the 25th of March from my home city in Greece, Yanina, loaded onto 97 covered trucks, brought here. Only 138 survived, as did 67,151 of the 80,000 were killed of the 80,000 Jews during the war, during the Holocaust. So thank you for this experience. As I said, my Jewish heritage has led me to combating anti-Semitism and to dealing with various issues. So in Greece, which is the question you asked for initially, the former government, the Samaras government, was instrumental in ousting from the parliament a party that came to power as a result of populism during the very difficult years of financial crisis in Greece after 2012. This is the Golden Dawn neo-Nazi party, and the previous government, of which I was a spokesperson, had the, let's say, courage to designate it as what it was, a gang of thugs, of neo-Nazi thugs. And so we took them to court. The trial has now come to pass under the new government of Kyriakos Mitsotakis. And no, they're not gone. Because we're going through a new wave of populism now with the energy crisis and the war, and crisis to crisis to crisis, that's the new normal, right? So they're not gone, but we're fighting. Also, the government recognized Holocaust denial and hate speech, made it punishable crimes. And also, we had the rotating presidency of IRA, excuse me, and have adopted the IRA definition. Education, I agree, is a very big part of the component. But basically, we just need to keep fighting. And I assume there'll be a round where we can talk about the European approach to this, in which I'm very pleased to discuss with my colleagues how we can work together as parliamentarians in order to take joint initiatives, especially when it comes to what you mentioned, which is the other side of the coin, which is anti-Zionism. So thank you for this introduction.
Thank you. I want to hand over to Dr. Brandstetter, but should we do it directly, or should we maybe first introduce Mrs. Senator Delattre? Okay, Mr. Brandstetter, you wanted to directly.
I just wanted to follow up on the word
yes,
crisis. I think that's the point. There's this crisis, there are various crises, and what we realize in Austria, and it's probably in other countries it's similar, that as soon as there's a crisis, you're looking for a scapegoat. And that was a really shocking thing for me during the COVID crisis. Of course, I understand that people say, oh, there are a pharmacy industry and they want to make money, everything understood, fine. But it went so quickly in Austria that there was a group of people who said, okay, it's the Jews. And that's something, when we say education, of course education, but is education enough? How difficult, why is it so difficult to explain that there is not a group of people sitting together and say, okay, there is COVID now, we will have the new world order and we take over and this and that. That is so crazy, and I think that is one of the main things when you talk about Europe, yes, where we have to also compare how is it in different European countries, and what can we learn one from each other? Because this is the one thing that struck me the most. Last word, there's a place in Vienna, for the Jewish community, they are counting all the attacks. And we had 381 attacks in the first half of this year, 30% less than in the first half of last year, and the explanation is because there were less attacks because of the COVID topic. So that says that COVID really gave a push to anti-Semitic actions in Austria. Thank you.
Interesting.
Maybe I could follow up on this as well.
I would like to give the word to,
sure.
to Senator Delatre, and then we would love
Merci.
to go into the discussion.
Je vous en prie.
Effectivement, voilà, il est important que nous puissions continuer à coopérer sur ces dossiers d'antisémitisme. Mais c'est vrai qu'en France, nous élargissons notre réflexion sur le racisme dans son entièreté. Mais nous avons beaucoup de travaux sur la radicalisation islamiste, qui est quand même aussi au cœur de cette problématique. Et c'est vrai que quand on parle des problèmes d'éducation, nous savons que dans certains quartiers, il y a des sujets qui sont très difficiles à aborder. Il n'y a pas que la Shoah qui est difficile à aborder, il y a la guerre d'Algérie, il y a l'islam, il y a la remise en cause, nous, État laïque, de faire comprendre que chacun a le droit d'exercer sa religion dans le respect de l'autre et qu'il n'y a pas de loi au-dessus des lois de la République est un combat, est devenu aussi un combat, un propre combat dans notre pays. Et effectivement, ces dossiers de radicalisation islamiste, moi j'étais présidente de la commission d'enquête au Sénat sur la radicalisation islamiste, nous permet aussi d'avancer dans nos propositions sur le combat antisémite. Mais c'est vrai qu'il faut élargir cette vision, mais rester ferme et surtout avoir une grande capacité de collaboration, puisqu'on voit bien dans la radicalisation islamiste que les premiers pays où cela se passe, c'est au Moyen-Orient. Et qu'en fait, il nous faut déjà aussi avoir une coopération locale pour faire en sorte que les terroristes ne viennent pas sur notre territoire, pour que la diffusion de ce qui se passe par Internet, et c'est vrai qu'Internet aujourd'hui, si on parle du cœur de l'éducation, aujourd'hui Internet est vraiment le plus gros problème. Nous avons signifié à Google qu'aujourd'hui, c'était la plus grande plateforme radicalisée au monde. Donc, il y a un énorme travail. Alors, effectivement, ce n'est pas très... J'ai eu des réflexions de la part des salariés de Google qui nous ont dit qu'ils avaient du mal à entendre cela de notre part, nous, politiques, d'accuser Google, mais il n'en reste pas moins qu'il faut le faire. Protéger effectivement nos jeunes, c'est aujourd'hui réguler bien plus Google et toutes les plateformes, parce que TikTok, aujourd'hui des messages très courts partent sur TikTok. Moi je suis maman de 3 garçons, le dernier revenant avec des blagues, et je lui ai expliqué, et c'est vrai qu'on parle beaucoup de l'éducation, de l'enseignement à travers l'école. La première éducation, elle est à travers... moi je parle d'enseignement à l'école et l'éducation dans la famille. Alors c'est difficile avec des familles monoparentales déstructurées, c'est vrai, mais il faut que nous replacions ce combat au cœur de la famille, et de dire, moi je sais que quand mon fils est arrivé avec quelques blagues, je lui ai expliqué qu'effectivement on pouvait peut-être rire de tout, mais qu'il fallait savoir quand même s'autoréguler. Je lui ai rappelé certaines règles, et il s'est calmé, il a même désinstallé, à 16 ans, il a même désinstallé TikTok. Donc ça veut dire que dans la famille, on a quand même encore ce pouvoir, même si c'est un combat permanent.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, again, looking at the time, I really want to talk about the different implementations, but I think you all agree on certain points. It's the rise of populism, which is a problem. Not only populism, but you also, when you said anti-Semitism was rising in times of crisis, you need somebody to blame, as we heard from Jonathan before. It's the rise of in social media. You mentioned that was freedom of speech. I think there it really comes out. Where do we draw the line? And if is it even possible as a politician to do something against it? And the third part is actually a positive one. I heard the word collaboration. We have to work together. You're already doing it in your country. So please, Mrs. Asiko.
Thank you. Au sujet de collaboration, c'est très important de collaborer et de changer de best practices, comme on dit. Hein? I am president of a network called Transatlantic Friends of Israel. This is 171 lawmakers from the Knesset, from the United States, from Canada, and there's about 40 of us in the European Parliament. And we've undertaken a number of campaigns, let's say, that have to do with combating especially anti-Zionism. Designating Hezbollah as a terrorist organization in its entirety, which is something that only, I think, Germany, Lithuania, and Estonia have done. The US has done it. And the UK has done it, yeah. I was actually talking about EU countries. Sorry about that. The UK, the United States, Australia, and Canada. You see, we've made the transition in our head now. What can we do? We also did a very interesting campaign about the fact that there's a standing item, agenda number 7, in the United Nations and the Human Rights Committee, where every time Israel is, again and again and again condemned for human rights violations, as opposed to the other 192 countries that are only condemned 20% of the time as part of item number 4. But the most recent one, and I'm saying this because you always need to take advantage of the current circumstances to bring out these things, is the campaign that we're doing to designate the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of focus now on Iran, on what's going on with the suppression of the people's movement at the moment, the role that the guards are playing in that, and also, of course, on the drones that they're sending to Ukraine. So that's at the top of mind awareness now of people. So I think we need to take advantage of that and to show. I mean, Iran is the one that says, Israel has to be wiped off the face of the earth. Let's not forget that. So I think it's very important to focus on issues that are au courant in order to make sure that we bring ourselves together and join in a common cause. And the cause against the war of Putin is a common cause that we have at the moment. So Iran can be a common cause as well. Thank you.
You want to respond to that? Yes.
I think there was a very important point about populism, but there's an equally important point about language. Every time there's a conflict that rises up in Israel, the number of people who take to the streets and the chanting of from the river to the sea, that is a genocidal chant. The only thing between the river and the sea is the state of Israel. So I think we need to be very careful with what language we use, but absolutely call out the language that we see on the streets and social media, and sometimes even in our legislatures. Because what we do see on the back of that is the increase in populism to the point we see it in football, and we've seen examples in both Germany, Holland, Hungary. I've had cases of junior football with kids as young as 10 being hissed at on the pitch with that hissing to replicate the sound of the gas chambers. So we absolutely need to be calling out everywhere we see it. Is it possible? I don't know. But the absolute priority that we all have is to make sure that we keep on trying, because whether it is what's going on in Israel, whether it is COVID conspiracy theories, I myself got a kidnapping threat on the back of COVID. I'm not Jewish, but I do a lot of work with the community, but it all came down to, the thought that it was a big pharma Jewish conspiracy to try and weed out 5G and everything else, and we all heard these stories, and to be fair, they're absolutely tosh, absolutely no truth in any of them, but it didn't stop people speaking about them. But what we need to make sure is that anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism has no place in the mainstream. And when the likes of Facebook, Twitter, TikTok slowly up their game, and they absolutely need to, it will hopefully improve that. But we're seeing it on BitChute, where it's not just anti-Semitism, it's Holocaust denial. And that's the absolute worst of any anti-Semitism. So we just need to make sure that online is a safe space for all of us, but there's a hell of a long way to go.
Thank you very much. Actually, I will ask one of the last questions here, because we have to wrap up, unfortunately, already. But I would like to know, like, first of all, I want to know, is there one country in the European Union, and I include the UK now because we talked about the neighborhood enlargement projects also, and that this is an issue we all have to work together, where we all have to work together. So is there one country where you see they're doing exceptional work against the fight of anti-Semitism? They're like standing for their values, and also where do you really see that you have to in what fields do you have to collaborate? Is it the protection of Israel, or not like mixing anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism? Is it the BDS movement? Like, what do you think is the core which each country in Europe should have a legislator in? Yes, Mr. Brandstätter, you wanted to say something.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I want to say number 5 in this Austrian strategy is documentary and comparison of data all over Europe. I think it's really, that's probably part of the answer. I don't know. I would like to know. Data is not everything, but I think data could be a basis for further action. Secondly, of course, it's education. It's education of people living here, but especially also education of people coming from other countries, from Islamic countries. Because to explain that nobody wants to be stupid. And racism is hateful, of course, but it's especially stupid because there is only one human race. And every scientist will explain it very easily why there is only one human race and where whatever the color of your skin, whatever, so we are so much, so close together, you know, with, especially what the Austrian Germans is, with a little part of Neanderthal, as we know. About 4% is Neanderthal, but there is only one human race, and so racism is stupid. And we have to explain it to the young people. I think that's really key. As we know from the Austrian data, also through the COVID crisis, it was more the older people that they believed there is some kind of conspiracy around COVID. Younger people believed it less, probably also because they talked in their schools about it. And I think that should be really a European movement. Bring people together. We heard yesterday, and I really stress it also as far as Austria is concerned, everybody, especially every child, every young person, a scholar student has to go to Auschwitz or to another concentration camp. There's Mauthausen in Austria. We do a lot that many kids go to Mauthausen. It's also terrible to go there, but it's also very necessary to go there. And do it with international groups. I think I would really try also European Parliament and the different parliaments. Let's work together. Let's go with different groups. Let's see. Last word, I said it before, I could talk so much about it. You know, when I was 25 years old, I was a stagiaire at the European Commission in Brussels, which was great because Austria was very far away from being member, so it was a privilege to do it. And we've been 25-year-old kids, and or young people, and we realized when we talked to each other that probably our fathers were shooting at each other. And we were sitting together and build up a new Europe, and I think we have to give it now to the next generation. And the nice thing with us was also that, of course, we were making fun out of it, that it's probably better that we go to the Italian guys for dinner, and we ask the Germans for some ideas, what we do in 3 weeks or whatever, you know. But we were laughing and smiling about it, and nobody said the other one was less intelligent, stupid, or whatever. So we realized that we were just Europeans living together and having the responsibility to build up this new Europe. And I still have to feel the responsibility, and I want to give it to the young people now. And let's do it as Europeans and not only as a nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Delattre.
Oui, merci. Je crois qu'il n'y a pas de pays qui soit premier de la classe en la matière. Il y a des pays qui doivent être unis et qui doivent travailler ensemble pour faire en sorte que nous puissions effectivement offrir un panel de solutions et d'outils en fait qui vont pouvoir être utilisés par les différents gouvernements ou par les différents supports associatifs, éducatifs, et qui vont permettre effectivement de lutter ensemble. Et je pense à un programme dans lequel nous pourrions certainement, parce que nous sommes déjà tous investis, c'est Erasmus. en espérant que la Grande-Bretagne, effectivement, puisse continuer à porter Erasmus, parce que nous avions beaucoup d'étudiants très intéressés par la Grande-Bretagne, qui sont intéressés par la Grande-Bretagne. Mais je pense que Erasmus, c'est le programme qui marche le mieux dans l'Europe et pour les étudiants, et qui commence à bien fonctionner aussi pour les jeunes apprentis, donc professionnels. Nous devrions mettre en place à cette occasion un module de formation aussi autour de les sensibiliser, parce qu'ils vont effectivement dans d'autres pays et il faut qu'ils apprennent la culture, mais aussi l'histoire de ces pays, l'histoire que nous avons en commun. Je pense qu'il y a des choses aussi qu'il faut savoir rappeler. En tout cas, je pense que l'Europe est un formidable outil pour que nous puissions continuer à collaborer ensemble, entre pays européens, mais aussi avec les pays étrangers, pour continuer à faire en sorte que nos bases de renseignement soient effectivement communes, et que nous puissions combattre ensemble ce fléau.
Thank you, thank you. And then you can end.
Yeah, where to begin? Where do I think there's been good example? In football, Hungary. And I won't try to pronounce the name of a football club, but just a couple of years they had swastikas flying in the stands, and they've turned that football club around so that it's a family-friendly club. Borussia Dortmund in Germany, exactly the same, maybe less so with the swastikas, but certainly the sentiment of anti-Semitism was loud. So just two football clubs as prime examples. Chelsea, for what they were doing, even under Roman Abramovich. But then we've seen the worst when we saw the European Super League being touted. We saw, just abuse being online directed at the club owners who happen to be Jewish. You can be angry at a decision, but that should never spill into hatred or racism. And I fear that it did. Do I think there's examples of bad practice? Certainly in Scotland. I think there has been in England as well, predominantly at a local level. But I think it's the mixture when you've got the far left, the far right, and the Islamist sections. And again, it all comes down to anti-Zionism and that classist argument. So I think there's a lot more we can do. But again, it all comes down to education.
Education. Thank you very much. So,
All right, I'll be very brief. If I had the privilege of setting the top issue on the agenda that we would work together, I think it would probably be online hate speech. I think that covers education. I think that that's something that's cross-border. I think that that's something that we all can approach. I think that that's something that's very useful, and I think that it also covers all the age groups. I don't know about, my kids just lives online now, so there we go, yeah. So that's what I would put as a top priority. But it's just wonderful, and I just would like to, in closing, thank you very much for including me in this very distinguished panel. And let me just say that I do hope that we'll find ways to work together for all of our benefit in the future. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Please continue your work like you do. Thank you. I would like to I would like to invite my next panelist. We are getting a bit younger now. Everybody talks about education here, but maybe we hear a little bit more about that from people who are actually still, or some of you are already done, I know, but with the educational part, we want to hear about your experiences. Maybe come here. Oh, I can come closer to you, it's also fine. Yes, and also how does it feel to be a young Jew in Europe? I know we already heard a great speech yesterday from Juan. So I would like to hear from you about your experiences. I know that right now in the UK, for example, by the way, this is Abel right next to me from the UK, and you represent UK and Hungary, right? So I know that right now not long ago, like a month ago, the National Student Union official. She was voted down because of her anti-Semitic comments. Maybe you can like say something to that, but also please like start by introducing yourself, what you're doing, and yeah.
Thank you very much. So again, my name is Abel Kessler. I'm originally from Hungary. I have been in Scotland for almost 4 years now for university. I am currently also the co-president of the Glasgow Jewish Society. So in the past, the National Union of Students, which is the main representative body of all students within the UK, they elected a quite anti-Semitic president and who has tweeted several extremely vile comments, basically calling for the annihilation of all Jews in Israel. And after that, she went under review, basically due to a lot of activism from a lot of students and, of course, partner organizations such as the EGA, which again led to her firing actually quite recently, so just in the past week, which is, by the way, the very first time a president was sacked in the middle of their mandate. So that is huge props for all the organizations and definitely for those students who took part in it.
Thank you, but you had a lot of support from the outside to do that, right?
Yeah.
So please, Carla, introduce yourself.
So my name is Carla Aniwa. I come from Brussels. I work at the European Jewish Community Center, as well as finishing law school, hopefully this year. I'm here to represent the Belgian students because I am one of them, and we have faced many challenges. We are still facing many challenges. There have been new violent shows of violence on campuses with the recent elections in Israel also. Things are getting a bit tense, and we've seen that everything that happens in Israel has an impact on Jews in Europe, and so that's my main focus today.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that. First of all, as a non-Jewish person, how does it look like when you're Jewish on campus and you say there have been attacks? Like, what does that mean? I know I have some examples in my head, but you just said now recently there was a wave of discrimination against. So maybe talk a little bit more about that also.
Well, I mean, it's difficult because in a way you explain that there is a new wave of violence and anti-Semitism that is only growing, and we're trying to talk about it, but it's hard to show, it's hard to quantify, and that's the main struggle, and that's why we also focus on intercultural dialogue. It's a big part of it. Knowing about Jews will help people not hate Jews, I believe. Maybe you guys agree, but that's my main opinion.
Thank you, Carla. Juan.
Well, first of all, sorry for my voice. I'm sorry for those of you who had to hear me yesterday speak. You're going to have to hear me again. My name is Juan. I come from Palma de Mallorca in Spain. I'm the director of Jewish Mallorca, and I'm the president of public affairs in the Federation of Young Youth. I have to say my in-campus experience was in the US and in the UK, so I cannot talk about Spain in that way. But from my field of work, I can talk about what I do see currently now in Spain. And what I do see is that the main problem with Spanish population is that they have not, I would include myself as a Spaniard, we are not exposed to Judaism. Most Spaniards don't know anything about Judaism. And in other countries in which there's a larger Jewish population, such as the case of the UK, such as the case of France, the US, they're much more exposed to it. But in the case of Spain, literally until 50, 60 years ago, we had no Jews. When we look at the numbers during, pre the Shoah, we had 2,000, 3,000, very tops. Because that's the thing, after the Spanish Inquisition, close to 10% of the population before the Inquisition was Jewish in Spain, 7 to 8%, which is unbelievable. But right after that, with expulsion from Spain, we see that Spain has not been exposed to Judaism. And now we have about 50,000 Jews in Spain, which is which is great. It's getting a lot better, and especially in cities like Madrid, Barcelona, because there are big cities, and now there's more communities, more activities, which is incredible. And I have to say, in terms of anti-Semitism itself, we don't see as many problems, as many demonstrations on the streets with that, but we do see, once again, that the problem is on anti-Zionism. We have the current government of Spain is led with a coalition of a socialist and a communist party, and they are extremely anti-Zionist, in other words, anti-Semitic, and that is a huge problem to the Jewish community of my country. We have elections next year in Spain, so hopefully we will have a new government that will be able to change that, because as of right now, we're not getting that support from the government, I have to say. Yesterday, I announced to everyone that the Spanish Supreme Court set a historic precedent in terms of, any public institution, because there were 85 city halls all across Spain that adhered to the BDS campaign, because parties like Podemos, which is a far-left party that was financed by the Republic of Iran, by the way, and Venezuela, among others, they were the ones who encouraged the city halls to engage with the BDS and normalize something that should not be normalized, as I said yesterday. So now the Supreme Court made something, as I said yesterday, historic precedent. So now they announced that the BDS is an illegal, if you do that, it would be illegal, which is great. It's a great first step because we're the first country in Europe to do that. But we still have a lot of work to be done. And once again, going back to education, one of the things that I do is that I go regularly to the schools to teach about the Shoah. And you see it on 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. Most of them, when you tell them about Nazism, about what happened, they can tell you, okay, Hitler sounds familiar, but that's it. If you ask them, what a Magen David is, they have no idea what that means, or what, the sign that every Jew would have to wear. Do you know what that is? They will be like, no, I've never seen that before. Or they will be like, oh yeah, the Masons, or the Satan, or something like that. So that goes to show the problem of how people have no clue about Jewish history in my country. And in terms of the Holocaust, we still have a lot of work to be done, and we need teachers and highly trained educators to take care of that, because that's the future of my country and of the rest of the world, and we need to start there.
Thank you so much. By the way, I remember, Carla, I think you told me before, somebody looked on your head for horns once because you were the first Jewish person they met. Oh, there was another friend who told me also great story. Yes. That was Shirley, actually, so thank you. So, but BDS was the topic, but Abel, I think I see you want to respond to Juan, so please feel free.
Right, today, there was a lot of talk about how to combat anti-Semitism, how to combat anti-Zionism altogether in the, quote-unquote, adult world, right? And I think that's in general, from my personal experience, I'm sure you would agree as well, it's entirely different than in the student realm, really, because the top-to-bottom approach doesn't work. Really does not work. In the UK, at this point, almost the grand majority of universities have adopted IRA. Doesn't make a difference. Really does not make a difference. It's a great show of solidarity, but it gets to the point where it really needs to come from the bottom. And the bottom is the students. The bottom is us. The bottom is the people who are really out there and do events, put on events for their fellow Jewish students and put on events for the greater community as well. And that is how you truly combat anti-Semitism on campus. That is how you truly raise awareness and combat the fact that just Juan so eloquently mentioned as well, that we are basically, in our essence, unicorns, right? Most of the time, we are the very first Jew anyone has ever met. And even though, again, the UK has a grand Jewish population, it's London Central, right? Birmingham, etc. In Scotland, my university has, thanks God, a quite large community now. We are about 50 people, which is great. But again, we are 28,000 at my university. 28,000, which obviously means that most of the time I'm the very first Jew that they meet, and I have to put on a show, right? I have to show them what Judaism is really about, and it's not what it is that you see about Israel, and they often conflate the facts. So it's us, we are the ones who are out there, and we are the ones who will actually spread the news. because they genuinely do not care what the university publishes. They do not care what the government does. It's their personal experience, it's how they form their personal beliefs as well.
Okay, thank you so much. So I heard now a little bit also what you do from, like, you go to schools, you say you have to even do more events from your community, invite others who are like come from a non-Jewish background. But my question here is also, do you feel supported from society enough? You have several representatives sitting here from different like countries in Europe. What do you expect from them? How can they help you? Can they help you? Yes. Where do you also see maybe like shortcomings?
I think there's definitely a Jewish initiative that has to be put in place. It's first of all our responsibility to spread, explain who we are and our mission in this world. Also open up to other communities is very important. I do this through a project I'm in charge of called Dialogue and Diversity. And we see a difference opening up to other communities and just engaging from human to human rather than Jew to Christian to Muslims. We focus on things that bring us closer rather than things that separate us. And I think that's where we should definitely start. Now, as for support, it's lacking, to be honest, whether it be financial support, because we have so many ideas, we have so many projects that we want to put in place, but we're often, stopped by money, basically.
For sure.
So that's my opinion on that. I don't know what you guys think about it.
No, I would just like to add something very quickly. Interfaith is essential to fighting against all sorts of, racism, xenophobia, etc. And that's something that Carla knows really well. I think it's very much necessary in our society because at the end of the day, there's so much more that unites us than what divides us as human beings. That's where we should start the conversation, not as a Jew, Muslim, Christian. 100% agree. In terms of societal support, first I would like to mention that in our case, for example, we did something called boot camps, which has been, I met these two wonderful guys a year ago in Paris because EJ did this project called the boot camps for the European Jewish youth. And it was so great because we were able to not only meet one another and create this sense of bond, and because we're a family, we're the Jewish people, and which is amazing, but also empower other people to also come along and be here at this stage and take lead and have initiative in their own respective countries in whatever they may need. But at first they need the tools for that, and we need more boot camps for that. We need to be all together for that. So in that sense, I have to say that besides the incredible work that the AGA does, and we need more help, obviously, at all levels, coming from the government of every country, the EU level in Brussels, we definitely need more support because what I tried to say yesterday in my speech is that I can say that we're all a bit tired of nice words. We hear nice words every year, which is great, but we need concrete measures at the end of the day. We need concrete measures. So we need to propose them, 100%. But also at the same time, we need help. We cannot do this at the end of the day all of our own because anti-Semitism is not a problem that obviously affects us as Jews, but affects society, and that extrapolates to many other things in the world. So it is very important to understand that, and I think that there's, of course, a lot of work that still needs to be done, but also a lot of support that we still need from governments, and unless they need to start realizing that that's a problem that affects everyone in a society. But yeah, leat, as we say, baby steps. But starting things like having the boot camps has been something incredible, and I hope we can keep doing it so more people like us will feel empowered to take on the stage and become Jewish leaders in their communities.
If I may quickly echo my brother's message right there, 100%, 100%. As you may know, fighting anti-Semitism is quite tiring. You can't really see it because we have excellent skincare routines, but we're all extremely tired at this point. And these outings, the boot camps, they're extremely empowering. They're extremely empowering. We get to the point in the year where we're all extremely tired and exhausted and genuinely burnt out. And these occasions provide us the opportunity to network and meet fellow students who are in the exact same boat as us. And not only that, but also gives us the motivation to go back to our campuses and ourselves ideally inspire other students and spread the network.
Thank you so much. So unity again, and before I leave you and we go over to the next panel, in 2 words, in 10 years, what would be the best situation and what would be the worst situation? Maybe start with the worst so we're not going to leave like one.
We try not to think about the worst. I think I'll start with the best. The best is just to be able to be Jewish and not have it be something you have to hide, and just not see the differences. I mean, just appreciate and share your religion with others, and so they can share it with you and not have it be a big deal. That's my mission.
I'll quickly go both ways. I think for me, genuinely, the worst is just being the same. If things just didn't improve, not even getting worse, just if things didn't improve, that would just be a failure on my end, really, and a failure on all our ends. But beyond that, the best, exactly what Carla just said, being able to be ourselves, being able to communicate and just network with our fellow students and genuinely be there for our education and not have to work day and night to just combat anti-Semitism on campus, which sounds surreal. Genuinely, just believe that 19-year-old kids go to campus for the very first time, and the first thing that they go through is an anti-Semitic incident, right? The first thing that happens to them is discrimination. They get isolated from their community in the peak of their life. That is the time when they leave their home, leave their parents' house, and it's the first time when they actually sort of encounter the real world. And this is the first thing that comes forward.
I know we're running out of time, so 3 words: normalize being Jewish.
Thank you so, so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are slowly coming to an end, but we are not at the end yet. Actually, we're coming to a topic which is a little bit the elephant in the room, the imported anti-Semitism. I'm really pleased to to ask my panelists on the stage, please. So, thank you so much for all your patience. You heard a lot of information today. I hope you also learned some new things. And I'm actually going to start with you, Elise, because I know you have to get Mr. Ulian, right? Ulian from the Netherlands. You're an MP from the Netherlands. I'm really happy you are here because you're from Iranian descent, actually Afghani-Iranian, both, but we hear more about that. And we heard that there is like rising anti-Semitism. Yes, on the neo-Nazi side, but it's kind of this old kind of anti-Semitism. And I read a report that 53% in the Netherlands think that it is also because of the tolerance towards the Muslim that anti-Semitism is rising in their country. So please introduce yourself a little bit, your story, why this is dear to you, why this topic is dear to you. And yeah, thank you. What the approach of the Netherlands. Thank you.
This is important,
yes,
otherwise
very
you can't
important.
hear me. So thank you, my friends. It's great always to be here. There's so much I could tell you about, but since we all want lunch and we're all busy, I'll make it kind of short. This was my first visit to Auschwitz-Birkenau. And yeah, what can I say? Evil did exist and evil still exists. And the first time I saw the result of evil was in the eyes of my father, who told me the story about my family members who have been executed by the Iranian regime. We don't even know where their bodies are. And let me make a quick remark on Iran. Another representative mentioned Iran. Please, my friends, if this fascist, because make no mistake, this regime is a fascist regime, if it falls, the whole world will be a better place. But especially for the Jewish community all over the world, because there is no, I cannot think of a more anti-Semitic regime than the Iranian regime. So if they fall, the world will be a better place, but especially for Israel and the Jews. So what are we going to do together against evil? Yes, we are importing anti-Semitism in Europe. This is a fact, we all know this. But it's coming from all corners. In an unashamed way, people are talking, even in my own parliament, in an anti-Semitic way. So the question really is, what are we going to do? Today, all of us. We are the people in power. We represent the people. And we all know what mistakes were made not so long ago. It's not so long ago. So what I did, because I think when evil looks you into the eye, you don't walk away, you look back and you act. So I made a bill with my esteemed colleague Gert-Jan Segers, which I can talk about for another hour, but I will give you 3 points. Firstly, we're talking a lot about education. I heard this word, this kind of magic word, all day. But you know, my friends, if the teacher does not understand what the Shoah was, what the hell is the teacher going to teach the children? So we have to teach the teacher. So this is one first point of the bill we made. We need to make sure the teachers understand what the Shoah really was. Secondly, the stories need to be told. Not by me, but by people who have a personal relationship with what happened in the war. Maybe your neighbor had Jews into hiding. Maybe your uncle was in the resistance, but the personal stories need to be told forever and ever. So that's one. Secondly, justice and criminal law. You know, when a Jew comes to the police station and the police officer is like, yeah, well, anti-Semitism, what are you talking about? I don't know, just go home. We are in big trouble. So the second part of my bill is we want to make sure that every police force in the Netherlands knows what anti-Semitism is. When someone comes to the police station and says, I was the victim of anti-Semitism, okay, we're going to call the DA's office. We're going to make sure we find the person who did this. So, and thirdly, this is very important because we have to focus on the positive things. Foster Jewish lives. In the bill, there's a point that will make mandatory for local governments to pay attention to the positive things of the Jewish life. So this is what I'm doing. Why is this important? My friends, we are in a fight. Make no mistake, we are in a fight, and the only way to win the fight is to call your enemy out, call evil out, and to stand firm and to take action. I see a lot of colleagues taking notes. Please make bills, please make laws, because otherwise evil will triumph. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, yes, I would hand over to Senator Ruben Moreno Palanques. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Ruben Moreno. I'm from Spain. I'm here with my colleague from the Senate, Antonio Gutierrez Limones as well. And I'm the spokesperson for the European Union of both Congress and Senate there. And you know, at the European level, we have something we have to resolve, which is, in Europe and in all advanced societies actually, which is how this personal improvement that everyone is looking for, some people will never reach because of the lack of education. And most of them are the losers of the fourth, already the fifth industrial revolution. And why this is important? It is important because they are feeding the phenomenon of populism. When you try to look to anti-Semitism, don't look at it as a single phenomenon. Anti-Semitism has changed with time, and it blends with other ideologies, in this particular case, with populism. The people said before, well, we have seen an increase in anti-Semitism with the pandemic, or with the financial crisis, or with any other crisis. The problem is there, when you have this crisis, that the populism increase. And always the populist party's regime is looking for no people who are adversaries. They are looking for enemies. And the enemies must be eradicated. So that's one of the problems we have. In this sense, education is an essential factor that actually explains why there are so many people who have not managed to meet these expectations, their expectations of improvement and progress in this current global and knowledge society. And this is a trend that we either solve or will increase in the coming years, to the point that it will be education and not the economic differences, the one that will propitiate the social gap that populism exploits. Because the populist actually, what is trying to, or they said, that they know who the people are and what is his will. And they try to use that to improve in this big fight that we have between the different parties. This is the danger that our societies face nowadays. And this anti-Semitic discourse has evolved and transformed through history. It is not only a chameleon ideology that adapts to the historical and geographical context, but a parasitic one that blends, as I said, with other ideologies. That's why we have and look after all of these different ideologies that we have in our societies nowadays. We have a shared responsibility in the European Union to shape Europe's future, and to do it, it is so important to understand our past. That's why it was so important to visit yesterday Auschwitz, and I'm finishing. I was there last summer as well, and I know that more than 2.5 million people are visiting this concentration camp. It is important to keep doing that, to make everyone aware of what happened in the past, because otherwise the memory of the people is so short that they will forget.
Thank you very much. I still think it's still not enough that 2.5 million people are visiting Auschwitz, especially now when we talk about imported anti-Semitism. How do we educate like new immigrants coming to the country? We heard it before. In some of their countries, the Holocaust basically doesn't exist. It even goes as far as being denied. So I will hand over to MP Petir from Croatia. You're also the chair or representative of the Croatian-Israel Friendship Group. We know that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, European Jewish Association, for invitation to this conference and panel. Croatia does not have problem with imported anti-Semitism because we really good establish our educational system. So, for example, some colleagues in previous panel mentioned BDS problems, which is on the European level, very huge discussion and issue. In Croatia, citizens don't know exactly what BDS is because they don't take care about some artificial topics which are put in the ether. On other hand, we just want to build good relationship with Israel. This year we celebrate 25th anniversary of establishing diplomatic relationship between Croatia and Israel. Most of citizens of Croatia are Catholics, and they look at Israel and Israeli people and Jewish people with great respect. and with love. So the situation in Croatia is different than maybe in some other parts of the Europe. Also, I'm very proud that Croatia was the first member of IHRA which translated a recommendation of IHRA about education on Holocaust and anti-Semitism. My colleague from Iran mentioned that it's really important to educate educators, and exactly, that is true. From 2005, Croatia educated more than 750 professors about Holocaust and anti-Semitism prevention programs, as well as other forms of discrimination. And we involved in our primary and secondary education inside of history, like mandatory teaching about Holocaust and anti-Semitism. We also, through cross-curriculum programs, establish also the teaching about life of Jews, their values, what is important for them, through primary and secondary schools. And also through curricular reform, we prepare new hours to educate our children. So I could say that I'm really proud that every children who goes to Croatian schools should pass those programs. It doesn't important is this child born in Croatia or come from another continent or now from Ukraine, because we received a lot of Ukrainians refugees and we help them and support them.
Thank you very much. I would like to speak about that a little bit more after talking to MP Michel de Mecht. You're from Belgium. And so, yes, I know in Belgium the situation is a little bit different. We just had Carla here representing also representatives from Belgium. As like a young Jewish woman who still cannot completely live free in Belgium, being Jewish and feel like safe, and it doesn't matter. So yes, what is the approach of Belgium? Do you believe there is like what can you do with the imported anti-Semitism? Are we scared to talk about it? Yeah.
Yes, thank you for your invitation. And it's right that in Belgium we have to make some progress in this fight against anti-Semitism. First of all, I would like to say that Belgium fight all forms of extremism, fight for the freedom of everyone to can be able to live in peace. And we don't tolerate in Belgium enemies of democracy. And who are those enemies of democracy? Anti-Semitism, racism, and discriminations. Belgians, as you know, obtained a seat to the Human Rights Council in United Nations. And we will use this lever to make a better the fight against anti-Semitism. I don't know if you saw last week, there were in Brussels, the capital of my land, the capital of my country, but the capital of Europe too, a demonstration with many mottos against Jewish population, and many mottos were supporting people from the terrorist Hamas. And at my eyes, it was totally unbearable. That's unsupportable to see that in my town, in the capital of the European Union. And we have to find it. I interviewed the Prime Minister, Alexander De Croo, and I received confirmation from him that last January that fight against anti-Semitism is one of the most priorities for the Belgian government. We have two things in Belgium. We have a national anti-racism plan, is currently under constructions, and we have also a watch unit. And this watch unit has also been set up. It brings together Department of Justice, Foreign Affairs, Equal Opportunities, and Interior Affairs, and many, many associations. And they analyze data and seek answers to be given against anti-Semitism. But we have to go further, and we know that. And one of the key to go further is I mean integration and education. One of the main actions is inclusive education for all new arrivals in Belgium, from early childhood to higher education in the university, for example. And unfortunately, as you know, new arrivals arrive in Belgium and elsewhere from countries where democracy is less developed or democracy doesn't exist. And so we must explain all the time our values via education, via culture, via social network. In my country, in Belgium, since 2016, every new arrival must sign a declaration that sets our standard values. That's the first steps, but that's not sufficient, and we will continue. And after that, if I have the occasion, I will give you an announcement of a project I created in Belgian Parliament.
Thank you very much. By the way, because this is our last panel, and I want everybody to still be present here, I really will welcome questions also from the audience, because it's all about this. We have to work together, collaborate together. So I know there's still some representatives also in the audience. So thank you. So we heard a little bit what's going on in your countries. You heard about the education of the educator, which I find extremely important. I'm not sure if it's part of your integration classes, for example, also because I worked in German politics for a while, and I remember in the years between 2015 and 2017, I talked to a ministry and they said, no, it's not part of our curriculum because we don't have time. But they have 8 weeks, I think. They don't have enough time, and that I think this is kind of the part of the core problem. So how would you address that? How do you reach to really people to teach them about the values also that you want to demonstrate from Europe, or democratic values? Yes, please feel free to answer.
Well, I don't know. We don't have time for anything, actually.
For opinions?
For anything. I mean, when you want to introduce into the curriculum something new, always the politician. You have to distinguish between the normal and common people and the politicians, which are totally abnormal, as you know. So the politicians always will say, well, we don't have time to introduce that into the curriculum and so on. So you have to do things from where you are. And what we did in Spain, as you know, the Sephardists Jews were expelled in Spain more than 500 years ago. But in 2015, we passed a law to allow the descendants of the former Sephardists to become Spanish citizens. This is something that actually it could be done, and we did it. It's like a signal, a message that you are accepting what actually, to the people who had the right to stay in Spain at that time. Now, as you said, something else we have to do from the educational point of view, because, as I said before, the memory of the people is really short. And I give you just an example to not make it any long. We had a terrorist group in Spain, which is the ETA. They tried to kill me, by the way. 10 years ago, they finally disappeared. Now they are in the institutions through the political branch. But when you ask the young people who the ETA was, the terrorist group, like the IRA in Ireland, they don't know. And this was 10 years ago. And really, almost 1,000 people were killed by this terrorist band. So when you ask for something that happened 84 years ago, most people don't realize what happened. So that's why I said this about Auschwitz and other things, and this is a perfect event to keep that alive. I mean, unless you remind the people what happened, there are chances that will happen again. And you are seeing that in Ukraine, and you are seeing that in other wars that we have afterwards. So that's why I'm not saying that you have to introduce that into the curriculum in the schools, but again, you have to tell the people that. And finally, in Spain, we don't have problems with anti-Semitism. We don't have it. But again, among the politicians, there are people pro-Palestine and pro-Israel. This is not anti-Semitism, but again, I mean, they will not support Israel, some of the people, and other people will not support Palestine. This is something that we have to rid of, because otherwise it's feeding this sentiment that some people have against one country or another.
Thank you. You wanted to respond to that?
Yes, I can hurt Mr. Moreno when he say there is a less of middle to act, but for me it's such a question of volunteer. And I give you an example. I was with you 3 years ago here in Krakow and in Auschwitz. And before I was politician 3 years ago, I was journalist in Belgium. During 20 years, I presented the news. And I invited many, many people from the Jewish community, Beat and Serge Klasfeld, for example, or Marek Alter, or my friend Henri Kishka, who unfortunately died during the COVID period in Brussels. And I decided as politician 3 years ago to continue this fight. And it was, I promised you, and I did it. And with the support of all the parliamentarians of my country, and there is, for example, Bjorn Anseu from NVA who are here, we adopted my resolution to create a national day in memory of the victims of genocide and the rights, the fight against genocide. And so I'm glad and I'm proud to announce you that for the first time, on the 9th December, the next one, a great day of reflection is being held in Belgian Parliament in presence of the member of the government, but also with many students, with many professors of universities, with specialists to fight the anti-Semitism, to fight the intolerance, and to try to have a better society in Belgium and all over the world. And for me, it was really important to do that, and I'm happy to say you it's okay.
Thank you.
Well, this is, my colleagues are telling very important things, but for me, the key is we should not only think in the past, but we as representatives of the people, we need to show that the Jewish community, they are our neighbors, they are our friends, they are here to stay. The Jewish people have been on the run for 2,000 years. We should say, look, if Europe cannot be a safe place for the Jewish community, then Europe is lost. This is our history, but this is also our future. So, as members of parliament, we are the first ones to have a responsibility to go to the front line. Say, look, this is what we stand for, this is the law, this is the bills we are making, these are our European values, and these are our friends. We are walking hand to hand, in Brussels, in Antwerp, in Amsterdam, in which country, wherever. And we as first, we should tell our people, look, these are our Jewish neighbors. Let's be together. We celebrate together. We are friends. I think for me, because, we talk a lot about what's happened, but I do hope that we will live to see the day that we will smile together, that what yesterday a very important person said, be happy in the world. That's our task as politicians, is my opinion.
Thank you.
Europe is based on Judeo-Christian roots, and we should testimony with our lives that we respect these values and that we live for this. That means that we need to teach children from the very beginning what that means, how to respect other human beings, how to support them, how to communicate, how to be good neighbors, how to be friends, how to tolerate each other, because we cannot agree in everything, but we need to have dialogue about our differences and try to understand each other. That means that first and the most important, it's the role of the family. What children will learn in the family. The second step is what children will learn in the school, because most of their time they spend in a school. So I'm really surprised when you mentioned that your government does not have time to look in curriculum and put some classes which will be connected with combining.
I have to clarify. In schools, yes, we learn from the age of 9 to 19 about it a bit too much and in a wrong way, because in the end nothing sticks. But it was really about the integration class when there was like so many immigrants coming in. Mm-hmm. So it was like that part.
Yeah, but it should be obligatory for everyone's. Yes. You know, we can't separate if there are values. I can be Catholic outside of this room and in this room something else. Mm-hmm. I'm what I am, and I should testimony this with my life, with my words, with my deeds. Mm-hmm. So it's the same in school or everywhere else. It can be separation because somebody who came to Europe because they don't believe in the same values, refuse to learn about something which our values are. It's not acceptable. And it depends about politicians, because most of politicians, especially on the European level, pretend that political correctness is something which could bring new value. I'm not sure what is political correctness today. And is this good? Because on other side, we open space for some really, really big problems. So I would just want to tackle the role of social media, where, hate speech is really present. And you will see when you publish maybe a photo or some thoughts from this conference, how different people will react on this. So it's a lot of job in front of us as a politicians. We need to have time for good things, because we are elected from the people who expected that we organized a normal and decent life for every person. It doesn't matter, is it from our country, is it coming from our religious group or our nation, or something which we really appreciate. We need to bring society which will be inclusive for everyone, but stand for the values on which European Union is built.
Thank you so much, Ms. Petir. And actually, these are amazing closing words of the symposium, because I wrote down here, there's something that really connects like Jewish and Christian values, and I think it comes from the Bible, Torah. It says like, love your neighbor like yourself, basically. And I think this is like something we should really think about, like going back to our different parliaments, our countries, and also sitting in Brussels. We have such an opportunity here to do change together. So please, don't just go home and listen, but really act. We heard it is possible to give bills, but also support the minorities, support the young Jewish life in your countries, the Jewish communities. Thank you so much to all the speakers. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I'm handing over back to Alex Benjamin from EJA. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I beg your indulgence for literally just 2 minutes, because a warm lunch awaits. And at that lunch, my colleague Shirley will have all the pickup points for you for your transport home.